It's 10 at 3 time in Tennessee. What's up, y'all? How are you? How are you today? How are things going in your world? Probably not great for a lot of people, at least in this part of the world today. Nonetheless, we are here, and it is 10 at 3 time. Wes Rucker here with Lord of the Streams, Tom Barkley, sitting here on a chilly Monday where I think the sun may have shined just a little bit. But
yeah, it's still pretty chilly out there, but hope all y'all out there had a great happy Thanksgiving.
I sure hope you did, and I really hope that you enjoyed specifically your Thanksgiving Thursday and specifically your Black Friday, because Black Saturday, not so fun.
Well, it's Cyber Monday, right?
Today's Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday. It's every day this week is named after something.
Yes, and
Giving Tuesday.
And I was thinking, like, I'm no longer at a place where, like, I'm actively selling anything, because we want everybody to have access to this. We provide this for the people. But if you want to give me money directly, I mean, I'm not going to tell you no.
Sure.
So, I mean, if anybody out there watching, listening in this building wants to just give me money, I'll take that. It's a Give Wes Money Monday. We'll call it that. That's what we'll call it. Tennessee on Saturday is a bad day. We got a lot to talk about on this show.
Not great. Not as expected, at least.
No, not competitive in the final 8 or 9 minutes or so of that game. I don't know if the 45-24 score is completely reflective, but it's reflective enough of the way that game went. And that's very clearly what we're going to talk about for most of this episode here today. We got a lot to go over in an hour. I don't know if we'll get to all of it, but the plan, we'll mention maybe just up top a little bit, just a couple of quick basketball news. The Vols are up to 13th in both polls, the men that came out today. They are playing at Syracuse Tuesday night. That's a big game in that's the SEC ACC Challenge up there playing in it. It's called something else now, but still the Carrier Dome to me. And Syracuse is still a better brand than an actual product right now in basketball, but it's significantly better than it was last season. And that Syracuse team that I saw last week over in Las Vegas, that team is good enough to give you some trouble, and that team has done a couple of good things this season. So look out for that game. Tennessee is a 6.5-point favorite. I still think the Vols are a top 10 team, but they bumped up, I think, from 17 or 16 to 13 this week. So that's closer to the ballpark. I think it's in the ballpark. It's in the park. I don't know if it's exactly where they should be, but it's early enough in the season, and they did turn around and lose to Kansas after those first couple wins. So I guess, like, I can understand it's not the end of the world, but regardless, they are up in those polls. You know who's not in the polls, though, would be the Tennessee football team. For the first time since the first week of 2022, I believe it is, the first time since the first week of 2022, Tennessee football is not ranked. And honestly, I'm not a voter this year. If I were a voter, wouldn't be in my top 25 now. It wouldn't. The end to that game, to have Diego Pavia, who is objectively a very, very good college football player, if he gets to the Heisman Trophy ceremony as a finalist, no one can say that's undeserved. He is absolutely, without question, say whatever you want about the fella, say whatever you want about him, one of the best college football players on the planet right now. And after all the talk he did, he came to Knoxville, he backed it up. He backed up every bit of it. Even after last season, Tennessee, he talked a lot. Tennessee went to his house and humbled him. But he didn't stop. He didn't back down. He doubled down. That's what he did. Kept talking again this summer. Now, we'll see what Vandy's going to do after he's gone. Like, there's a lot of things. That's a lot of juniors, seniors on that team. But they're in there for a 5-star quarterback now they might be getting. They've proved they can go in the portal and get good players. If they want to throw some of their NIL wealth, some of their endowment wealth, some of their boosters' wealth around and actually put it in sports, sure. They could be, at the very least, what Georgia Tech is to Georgia, a team that's good enough to give you some issues. And that's, I mean, Tennessee just stood there in the fourth quarter and watched that happen. And that was the first time, the final 8-9 minutes of that game, were the first time in the Josh Heupel era where I sat there and I thought, I don't know for certain that they're playing hard. And if any of y'all know me, if you're new, if you've just kind of gotten on board this year with the new show, the policy for me has always been I don't like to question effort because it's not something. There could be reasons why things look the way they look. Sometimes a player looks like he's kind of gliding or coasting, but he's really just a smooth athlete. Arian Foster was that way. And sometimes I think people equated that with him not playing hard when, no, that's just his style. He was just kind of gliding out there. But Tennessee, it has not always played well in the Heupel era. There's zero question about that. More good than bad. But the play itself at times, early on he took over a mess. Hey, some of the games were problematic. That's to be expected. Until this season, he had done, for the most part, anything you could have asked him to do given the situation he walked into. But even when that team hasn't played well in the past, particularly on defense, you still saw them swarming to the ball. You would see missed tackles, but you still saw, on film, you saw way too much gang tackling to say that effort was an issue. But in the final 8-9 minutes of that game, when Tennessee's offense, Mike Matthews drops the ball, it's just a walk-in touchdown. Tennessee settles for a field goal. That gets the game. It's still within one score at that point. And then that's early in the fourth quarter. And then Vanderbilt turns around, gets another touchdown on a Pavia run, 24, 25 yards, whatever it was, with about 8:55 left, I think it was. And then the game, it was still a two-score game at that point, but it was over at that point. Tennessee had that feeling where we've seen this before. We've seen it at Tennessee early on in Heupel's tenure. When an offense feels like it has to score a touchdown every time it touches the ball, that creates problems for the offense. Like you don't get to 40 and 50 points by thinking we've got to go score 40 and 45 points. That's the plan going into the game, but you don't think about that during the game. You think about managing the game. You think about getting the most you can out of every drive, but also, there might be a throw you don't make when you're up by 2 scores, right? There might be places on the field where you do certain things, decisions you make that are different when you're in either a close game or you're behind or you're ahead, right? But when you feel like your defense will not get a stop and you have to score 7 points every possession just to have a chance, what that does to you, you make mistakes. And so most of this talk today is going to be about Tennessee's defense because it needs to be. But we will mention the offense as well because, hey, that drop there in the fourth quarter wasn't helpful. But things like that are magnified by the pressure associated with having to score a touchdown every time you touch the ball. That is not a healthy way to operate. Like, imagine being in you're in a relationship, right? And you feel like you have to be, like, you're out kicking your coverage. You feel like you got to be a 10 out of 10 every day. You got to do everything you can every single day. Every day. From the time you wake up to the time you're in the morning. Does she, did I get her flowers today? How am I doing with her friends? How am I doing? Do I need to cook a little dinner tonight? Do we need to have a date night? Do we need to? It affects who you are as a person when you're in a situation like that. It just does. And maybe that's not the best explanation, but for me anyway, that's how I think of what it feels like for an offense that feels like it has to score a touchdown every time it touches the ball. It makes mistakes. It makes you get out of your normal zone. It just changes you. And Tennessee had started playing defense last season where you didn't necessarily have to worry about that as much. There were times where it popped up. But it's just we judge offenses differently when they have to score a touchdown every time they touch the ball. That changes the perspective on so many things. It changes, sometimes your fourth down decisions where you might be kicking a field goal and now you got to go for a touchdown because if you kick a field goal, you've lost. You feel like you've lost 4 points because the other team's going to go get 7 and their lead's about to be bigger than it was. And when you're thinking like that, it affects the decisions you're making. It affects the risks you take. And you cannot compete. You cannot compete consistently against good teams when the only thing you can do is score 45 or 50 and hope to win. You'll win some games doing that. You absolutely will. And you can go upset some teams doing that, right? You can do that. We've all seen that. But it's not sustainable. It's not how you get to where Tennessee wants to be and where it thinks it should be and where I think it probably should be. It prevents that becoming like a 10-win team or an 11-win team. You just can't do it by having to score. Even if you do score 40 or 45 most games, guess what? There's sometimes where you won't. There's just not. There's sometimes where you won't. And the pressure of doing that adds up. And the reason why I'm not talking about the offense as much is that I have some questions about where Tennessee is offensively moving forward. But I ultimately, at the end of the day, for the most part, I do trust Heupel. I'd like to see more 60-minute offensive performances. You'd like to see better second halves in a lot of cases. You'd like to certainly see more discipline, but that's across the program, not just them. There's a lot of things that need to happen there as well, and I don't want to ignore that. But at the end of the day, I'm not worried big picture about Tennessee's offense. Like, it's not perfect, and there are things that need to be better to get where Tennessee wants to be. And there's now a whole offseason to discuss these things. Tennessee will play in a bowl game. I'm not going to say who cares, but basically who cares? What everybody's going to remember, I think, is how the Vanderbilt game ended. That's going to be the defining, and it should be, by the way. It should be. It should be the first thing everybody there thinks about when they go to work every day in the offseason. To let Vanderbilt, even a good Vanderbilt team, come in there and embarrass you in a place named for the man who was hired to beat Vanderbilt and did beat Vanderbilt, and then Tennessee pretty much stopped losing to Vanderbilt ever, by the way. Yeah, that ought to bother you. You're a coach, you're a player, you're a staffer, you're a support staffer, you're a strength coach, you're a dietitian, you're on the custodial staff, changing light bulbs, putting in trash bags every day. Yeah, that ought to bother you. That ought to bother you. And the biggest thing, though, we can all see it. Tennessee has to get better on defense. I mean, that's, and we've said all year long, I've said this, and I'll still stand on it. I'm not running from it because I believed it then, I believed it now. What happened to Tennessee defensively this season for the first 11 games? You don't give a free pass, but you have to understand. You have to understand what happens when you go into a season thinking you're going to have 2 first-round picks at cornerback, one of the most important places on the field in this era, and neither one of them plays more than 1 quarter in the entire season. Not 1 quarter of the season, 1 quarter of 1 game in the season. And then Gibson gets hurt. And McCoy was not able to get back the whole year. Tried hard, just couldn't do it. The ACL, hey, he's got a big future. I wouldn't play either until they're sure about that thing. That's a first-round draft pick. I would, if you're my kid, that's what I'd say. Hey, man, like, you do what you want to do. You're an adult, but let's make sure that thing's good before you go back out there. That knee's worth a lot of money. So that's not, I don't blame the players for that necessarily. I'm not a doctor, but the staff says they tried to go and couldn't go. I buy that. Unless something else comes up, I buy that. And then on top of that, two of your best defensive linemen are hurt for significant stretches of the season, which again, it's football. It happens. Doesn't help. Then your best defensive player probably, in my opinion, when they're all healthy, maybe even better than McCoy, as a college football player, Arion Carter, I think is phenomenal. I think he's a fantastic linebacker. He gets turf toe in your biggest stretch of the season, and he tries to play on one leg for a while, but he's not looking good. And then he's got to shut down for a couple of weeks, and he comes back, and he's not quite what he was. You put all of that together, and then the Boo Carter situation, which even if Tennessee had some issues there, and it did, it took a risk and it didn't work. But then when it flared up again in the summer, I understood Tennessee at that time, and really for most of the season still was or should have been a college football playoff candidate. And if you think, you know what, this is definitely Boo Carter's last season here, but at the very least, that guy might return a punt in one game that'll make the difference in beating a Georgia or Bama and getting to the playoff. If he'd done it in the spring, if he'd done it the previous year, that's one thing. But he had mostly behaved then. So if you feel like you're on track, then stuff pops up in the summer when, by the way, he and his people know you can't replace him at that point. So if you want to talk about a business play, hey, cold, but not dumb. At least in the short term. In the long term, it's probably an issue. The people aren't going to want to spend NIL or NFL money on you. But in the short term for business, hey, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't understand that. Hey, that's business, right? We live in a business era. Ask Lane Kiffin. Ask anybody. But you put all of that together on defense, I understood why things were they were until that finale, and especially the second half of that finale. You can't get – Pavia is an excellent football player, a truly excellent college football player. And Vanderbilt's offense has been statistically efficiently maybe the most efficient offense in college football this season, which is weird because Pavia's thrown some picks and had some fumbles. But when he's not doing that, they're consistently moving the ball, especially in the second half of games, putting points and yards on the board and doing it efficiently. And the way they just spread the field and went where the numbers told them to go, and just consistently, I cannot remember the last time that I saw a quarterback who wasn't named like Michael Vick or somebody like that in that much open space. Now, early in the game, he made a couple mistakes, throwing the ball where he shouldn't have, and got paid for it, got a couple picks on nice plays. But it seemed like there was that play in the first half where he just kind of, Tennessee's in a big moment, they got some momentum, Vanderbilt's maybe going to have to punt, and he kind of breaks out of the pocket and gets like a 20-yard gain to kind of keep them going, and seemed like things maybe started clicking for him a little bit more then, and from that point on, Tennessee couldn't consistently get anywhere near him. When you watch that film, it is the only way I can describe it is I can't remember the last time it felt like a quarterback was so close and so far away at the same time. Because there were bodies around him. They weren't getting hands on him. He was slithering away all day, and it felt like there was like a little force field or bubble around him. Like a foot in any direction. Maybe not too, maybe 18 inches to 12 inches, somewhere in there. There was a bubble around him. And Tennessee couldn't get in there. And it happened with Alexander, too, when they handed him the ball. They knew what to do. They countered. They went against the grain. They got the game in space. And Tennessee's angles and fits and gap discipline were horrible. Horrible. Listen, if somebody faster than you runs by you, or somebody stronger than you runs over you, hey, that's those are what Derek Dooley used to call battles that you lose at conception. That is what it is. If somebody's bigger than you, faster than you, jumps over you, runs through you, hey, that's life. But that's not what that game looked like. It looked like a team that was executing. Vanderbilt's not exotic. I mean, a couple little trick plays early on, but they do a lot of the stuff they do. They just execute it. And they give Pavia options on every play for the most part. You've seen, I mean, a lot of people do it. He can hand it to the back. You keep your eyes looking up, right? And you extend your arm out. You can give the ball to the back. You can keep it yourself. Or you can see somebody going open, pull the ball back, and throw it. You have 3 options at least on every play. And if you count all the receivers running routes, you really have about 5 options on a play, 5, 6. And after those early mistakes, Pavia just kept making the right decisions. And Tennessee could not get anywhere near them. Vandy was playing with its food. And whether Tennessee blitzed or dropped back, Vandy had answers for it. And Tennessee still, to me, until the final maybe 8-9 minutes, I still thought I looked at a team playing hard. Not well at all. Garbage, in fact, a lot of the time. So I don't want to sit there and create that dynamic because I don't want to go there unless there's more proof of that. Like Aguilar after the game talking about the team not practicing hard. I file that under things that players say after losses pretty consistently. Should have practiced harder, better, obviously weren't focused, yada, yada. That's standard boilerplate post-game conversation because it's more fun than saying, that guy's better than me. You don't want to say that guy's just better than me. So you say, I could have worked harder, practiced harder, executed better. And sometimes you're right, but sometimes it's just like, hey, man, the other team is as good or better than you and played better than you. And so I'll need more evidence before going there. Like, I think in terms of management of the program, the Nico stuff, the Boo Carter stuff, there's decision-making and things there that I think the most polite way to say it is that Tennessee took a chance, didn't work, and that hopefully they learn from it because they'll need to. Because everybody's going to make mistakes like that in this era. It's just you have to learn from them. You can't make them time and time again. You can't let that happen. You can't be held hostage. You just can't. You have to make decisions, move with them, enforce them. You don't treat everybody the same, but you treat everybody fairly, and you think about the big picture all the time. And the big picture in some cases might be a season. Big picture in some cases might be overall demeanor of a program, overall behavior of a program, ethics of a program. But I think some of this stuff on defense I could understand until that happened. For that to be the way a season ends, for Tennessee, you can't be nice about this. Kindness, there's a difference in being kind and being nice, right? You hear that all the time, or you should anyway, because it's a rule of life. Nice is somebody just smiling at you and being pleasant. Kindness is somebody telling you the truth. The truth is kindness. And so I don't think this is being unkind. They cannot play defense like this again next season. Because let's just assume for now, just for the sake of this argument, not for the big picture, because you can never assume anything in college sports. But let's assume for this argument that Josh Heupel's coming back to Tennessee, all that, yada, yada. Let's just assume that. Who knows? Listen, it's a wacky year. Penn State's got a vacancy. There's still some out there that, if you're somebody like Penn State, you would say, hey, is upgrading from – is Franklin to Heupel upgrading? Well, maybe not, but under Franklin, they consistently weren't scoring enough points and playing exciting offense, and so – I could see an argument where Heupel's exciting offense combined with what's usually a pretty stout Penn State defense could win something. You don't have to stretch anywhere to see that argument. Now, if I were talking to Heupel or anybody else, I would say, listen, James Franklin was a couple of breaks away from playing for a national title last season, and the next season he's gone. And there were reasons for that. They gave him a lot of NIL stuff. They gave him everything he wanted. It didn't work. I get it. That's business. But if you're going to get rid of a guy like that, who you hire matters quite a bit. But sometimes you get a little bit desperate and you got to do what you got to do. But for the sake of this argument, let's just say that Josh Heupel comes back to Tennessee. He cannot, if he puts another defense like that on the field next season, for a second consecutive season, it will be very, very, very uncomfortable for him here. It will be, and that is the best case scenario for him. And I say that as someone who's covered this program now for more than enough time to understand that. Been around the area, I get it. And if they allow this many points and this many yards next season, they better have an offense that was as good or better than Hendon Hooker's, or they're going to have problems. And so then the question becomes, what do? You have to do something. Now, sometimes mostly doing nothing is still doing something, because that something is the decision you've made to do nothing, because you believe in your people, you believe in your process, you think you had a tough year with breaks, things didn't go the way you wanted, there were legitimately some bad breaks in there, because I guarantee you, as good as Colton Hood is and as good as Redmond was at times late in the season, as good as he's going to be, they're both going to be pros. But if you're spending a season rolling Gibson and McCoy at corner and Colton Hood at nickel, you're not going to be giving up this many points and yards. You're just not. So if you want to sit there and make that argument, you know what? I want to keep Tim Banks. I want to keep my staff, because this is a big season for me next year, and I don't want to run the risk of bringing in somebody new, trying to cobble the roster together with some guys who might want to leave if Banks goes or staffers go, putting in a new system, getting them to understand it, and then implementing that to the field. Because there are questions with the Tennessee defense like that would never be a question with a Heupel offense, because Heupel's offense is his offense. No matter who's coordinating Tennessee's offense, no matter who's coaching the quarterbacks. And they were good. Alex Golesh is now the head coach at Auburn, by the way. Auburn. Joey Halsey, going to be a head coach one day. Good football coaches. I mean, Halsey's a candidate for the Broyles this season. It's always going to be Josh Heupel's offense. Just is. Defense is another matter. Defense is the area where a coach who has a more offensive mindset is a little more pliable, malleable, whatever you want to call it. There, what you're doing with your coaching staff and with the coordinator especially, that matters quite a bit. So then you're thinking, okay, if I do get rid of Tim Banks, do I have to go get somebody who plays a similar style but has a bigger resume, or a guy who's just a proven thing? And Heupel, as we know, does not like to fire people. Look at his career as a head coach. He does not like to fire people. And that's another question for another day. Can you be ruthless enough to do that if you feel like you need to do it? Something that should be done tomorrow or could be done tomorrow is something that should be done today. You should do it.
How much of his staff is still from original?
On defense, I'm not sure anybody except for Martinez. Maybe.
Yeah, probably not.
Well, Martinez, Banks, those guys have been with him. Those guys have been with him.
Yeah.
But on the defensive staff, there's been some other pieces come and go a little here and there, and guys elevated and things like that. But
yeah,
so they clearly believe and have recruited to a system like that one. That doesn't mean you can't change, because again, what I'm putting out here is that everything you do is a risk, and I don't mean that to scare anybody. I mean that to say that's life. Any decision that you make here, any set of decisions you make here, is one that has consequences and risks, and you can't, no risk it, no biscuit. Like, you have to do this. You have to do something. And that something is either bring in some changes on that defensive staff, but number two has to happen either way. Number two is you need more and you need better players. The lack of dynamic athleticism on that defense, especially when Arion Carter got hurt and then Ross and Josephs got dinged up, the lack of explosive athleticism was a problem. It was a problem. It's some of those guys had played too much football to play the way they played at times this season. And if you're not the fastest and you're not the absolute strongest, you know what you got to do? Be one of the smartest. You have to anticipate better. You have to consistently, 11 times out of 10, be in the gap you're supposed to be in. You have to calibrate your own quickness versus whoever's in front of you and take the appropriate angle. You have to set the edge. Beg, borrow, or steal, you got to get to the edge. You got to bring the play back inside. And if you're supposed to be in the B gap, the C gap, the D gap, the T gap, the whatever gap, name a gap, you have to be there. And if you're not, that's a hole. And if opponents get into a hole against a defense that doesn't have as many dynamic, explosive playmakers as you'd like, guess what you have there? An untenable situation. You have got to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Not just with meetings every day. Not just with all that. Maybe it starts there. I don't know. That's their business. But I don't think that's an issue. But what I'm saying is being responsible and being where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there, when you do those things, all those things off the field, what it's supposed to do then is filter to the way you play on the field. And some of these guys, when you watch this, you go, what are you doing? I don't want to single any of them out, but there's a couple plays where you go back and see it. I mean, I will single out the late hit on Pavia late in the second quarter. That changed the game. And that's from Jalen McMurray, who's one of the smartest guys on the team. One of the most reliable guys on the team. But there were also moments against like Kentucky where a couple plays where he didn't set the edge and some things happened. So it's not – they've got to go get more dynamic athletes, because if they can't find a way to get guys where they're supposed to be all the time, then they got to go get guys who are so freaking athletic and so freaking strong that it doesn't matter as much. If you're going to be undisciplined, that's not good. If you're not disciplined, you're probably not winning or competing for much of a championship anyway. But you're definitely not doing that unless you are really big, really fast, really strong, and a natural playmaker, an instinctual player. Somebody who maybe leaves the script but does it because they sense something that's going on, like that Palomalu stuff. Or occasionally that defense in Pittsburgh was 10 guys doing their assignment and then 43 just running around like a madman. Something like that. And so they've been here too long as a staff, even with some of those injuries, to be quite that bad defensively. And if they can't see the governor, the restrictor, the lower ceiling that puts on their program, then Tennessee's in trouble in terms of being where it wants to be. You don't want to overreact. No one wants to overreact. There's enough people out there in the world who do that. We're not going to do that. Not here. We're not going to do that. We're not a hot take machine. We might put out vertical videos like everybody else does, and we might say some fun things here and there. We're not saying serious things or acting like we're saying serious things just to say them. We actually mean what we say, and if we're joking, we're joking. If we're serious, you'll know it. We're serious here. This is serious. At least this one topic is. Other things, we'll go back to making jokes about whatever. But in this context here, not want to overreact. But if they can't see some of the consistent issues preventing them from being where they need to be, then Tennessee's in trouble in terms of being where it wants to be. It is some of the same stuff, some of the discipline stuff on defense, some of the discipline stuff on offense, the penalties. They're because of the way they play, there are a few things that come with that. You play as fast as Tennessee, for the most part, wants to play. It means that it's hard to have a ton of variety. And it means that you're probably going to have a few more procedural penalties. It doesn't mean that you have to run like 3 plays, but there are restrictions to putting guys in motion, to doing some things that they do occasionally. But if you were to slow it down, that gives you a lot more options and a lot more. They go the way they go, and most of the time it's pretty fast. They say it's not their only thing, and they're right, it's not, but it's a big part of their thing. And that comes with, you can't give without getting in this life. Football's no different from life in that way. You want to be extra in some way, you're probably going to be modest in some way. It's not completely it's not a zero-sum thing. There's a scale there, but think of it as one of those balances. You're a little heavier here, you're going to be more in the air over here. It's just life. But the penalties that they're having at times just can't have them. Some of this discipline stuff, got to get it cleaned up. Got to get it cleaned up. Not being consistently dominant late in games, got to figure that out. Got to figure it out. If you want, look at the teams who win things, big things, shiny things. They're usually pretty darn good closers, aren't they? Tennessee's got to get away from this. And I love the way they start most games. They are aggressive. They come at you, and sometimes they can beat you before you even know what hit you, right? That might be harder to do now that Golish is at Auburn and more SEC teams are going to see offenses like this more often, and Lane down there at LSU. You're starting to see a little bit more of some of this stuff, so it shouldn't bamboozle people the way it does at first. So they got to counter that. But these things that are happening, they either have got to they better believe strongly. Let's put it this way. They better, if they're going to keep preferring generally to develop over just NIL, they got to get those right. And there's no, hey, this guy hadn't played a lot. No, the stakes are the stakes. You want to develop guys? That's fine. That's a great ideal. It's a great ideal to have. I like that. I think we all like that. you think of it that way. It's like, there's no shame in doing it however you want to do it. But if it's your guys and you develop them and they're there for a while, that's awesome. Everybody feels more involved in that process. Fans naturally believe more in that process, or they believe more in guys who come from that process because they feel like they're your own. Even if they come from California or they went to high school in Texas, Maine, one of the Dakotas, wherever, Florida, wherever. You get them for 4 or 5 years, you develop them, they're your guys, right? Like, do people remember Peyton Manning that he's from New Orleans or that he played at Tennessee? A lot of people around think of, he came from Tennessee. That's what a lot of people think of. That's true for a lot of former Tennessee players, right? So that's fine. But you better be right about what you're developing, because if that's where you're spending a lot of your NIL resources, they better be ready to go. Your NIL resources have got to be shifted toward the players who are producing the most right now. Right now. And if that means you got to go be a little more aggressive in the portal, if that means you got to go buy more guys, suck it up, buy more guys. Got to. Or you better believe strongly, like, stand on a table for the guys you're bringing back. You better believe in that. I think Tennessee might have been the youngest team in the SEC this season. And if you're going to do that, hey, good on you. But you better be right, because next year, assuming you're still there, Josh Heupel, big year, cannot play defense like this. Any decision you make is a risk. And we don't know if he's got that ruthless streak in him. We don't know. Because the Sabans of the world, the Smarts of the world, man, if you're not their wife or their own kid and you can be upgraded, you're going to be upgraded. You will. The most ruthless people, by and large. It's not to say they have no loyalty, because it's true and it's not true. They have a loyalty to the cause of winning and being the best and raising the standard of people around them and demanding a lot, sometimes too much, but demanding a lot and not accepting anything less. So if they see, hey, man, dude, you're a good coach, you're at least a 7.5 or an 8, I can think of a lot of places that would be really happy to have you. But we need more, and we need something different. So here's your buyout. Thank you for the work you've done here. Give you a great reference. We got to go in a different direction. That is life. And if you want to get to the very top, like, there's the difference between like a Kirby Smart or like a Nick Saban and a Dabo Swinney. Which one adapted and which one didn't? Now, Saban, eventually there were too many changes, and he said, I'm done with this. And he left. Congratulations. You're still the GOAT. Dabo wants to keep coaching. Good for you. You're a great football coach. But the failure to adapt with transfers and offensive systems and just the general way of the world, look where Clemson is. Still bringing in good recruiting classes every year. But you lose guys, then you don't bring in guys. You keep coaches that you love personally, but maybe their systems are getting old or tired, or nope, that's what we do here. Cool. Philip Fulmer did that too. It worked until it didn't. And so this is where, for me, you hire somebody to do a job, and you let them do that job their way for the most part until they prove you can't trust them or they're not getting results. That doesn't mean that you never do oversight. You do oversight. You're a manager. That's what you do. You're a boss. But you hire somebody to do a job, and if they're doing that job, and maybe they're not doing it exactly the way you would do it, but they're winning and they're getting results, hey, cool. Maybe I'm looking at something wrong here. Maybe you've given me an idea here, right? But you hire somebody, and if you trust them, especially people toward the very top of your organization, for instance, to wit, your head football coach, most highest paid guy in the state for public employees. So yes, you trust that guy. You have to. And you let him run the program how he wants to run it. But he owns it. He owns the results. He doesn't own the program. He's renting. But he owns the results. Those are his. And if they're great, dude, they'll build statues. They'll build statues, and you'll make so much money that unless your kids are the dumbest kids in the world, they're going to be set for life. Right? You ain't got to worry about anything as long as you're alive. Nothing. Like if the market crashes, guess what? You got your own private island somewhere. Whatever. Or you don't get it done, here's your buyout and you're gone. So if you don't trust somebody who works for you to manage the people below them, they shouldn't have that job. That's how I look at it. Again, I am not I don't manage a lot of people because that's not naturally what I'm good at. I don't want that. I've never wanted that. There are people who are more organized for those things, if I'm just being honest, right? More of a creative thinker than a tactician or whatever, just kind of a big picture thinker, right? We're all different. I'm very much right-brained. But I know enough to know that if you hire somebody to manage people, if you can't trust them to manage those people and manage their department, they got to go. So let Josh Heupel, he's a lot more good than bad during his time at Tennessee. A lot more good than bad. And no one should ever forget what he walked into and what he did with it. He got Tennessee back to being he brought the standards back to Tennessee in a time that I frankly did not think was possible for anyone other than like one of the very super proven coaches in the game. And now that doesn't mean that he's going to win national titles here, right? Like sometimes you're the guy who gets you to the guy. And there's no shame in that. But Tennessee sees itself as a tier one, or at least at the very bottom of tier one, the bottom half of tier one, but in tier one in the college football world. Top 10 all-time in wins, basically. A lot of facilities, one of the biggest, best, most iconic stadiums. You're close enough to enough great players that you can recruit, and you have facilities to recruit them. You got a city that you could either look at as a city or a town, depending on whatever size you want it to be. Knoxville can be a city or it can be a town, depending on, you can sell it to anybody in that way. And it's got an airport that can get you where you got to go with maybe one stop. And some places, more places these days, not even a single stop, direct flights. So you have expectations, and he's brought them back. But now they're here. And that doesn't mean that anyone is suddenly not grateful for what's happened. Anyone remotely in their right brain, anyone with a sound frame of mind will appreciate what you've done. Right? That you should. And I think there is still much more reason to trust him than not. But this is a critical offseason. He has got to put a better defense on the field next season. Got to. Because we're not even talking about, unless Aguilar wins that lawsuit and comes back, we got a new quarterback too. Now, they're talented kids, for sure. But, I mean, you're breaking in a new quarterback. Even more imperative to be good on defense. Imagine if Joey Aguilar hadn't done some of the things he did this season, and neither had Brazel, neither had Braylon Staley, neither had Deshaun Bishop. and you had that defense out there. Are you even going to a bowl game? I don't know. It's that close. I don't know. But they've been recruiting well. Now they need to fortify it. They need to keep the guys they want to keep. And they're not going to keep all the guys they want to keep because nobody keeps all the guys they want to keep. That's not how this works anymore. You are going to lose players you don't want to lose. So is everybody else. You just got to replace them. You have to look at what resources you have available. You got to allocate them, not just to the future, because in this world, the future is now. These players can go anywhere they want any year. You have to be good now. You've got to get more dynamic at linebacker. Got to get more dynamic at safety. I think the corner situation, if they get at least a couple of those guys back, they're in pretty good shape there. And then everybody knows you always got to have linemen. So they've been recruiting good edge rushers, and they still are. But they've got to get better in the heart of that defense, and they got to do it now. They have to do it now. If you're going to put faith in some of these guys that are returning, you better be right. You better be right. And I think at the very least, you have to bring in guys to compete with them. I mean, there should be hardly anybody on that defense that goes into spring practice feeling like that job is theirs. Can't happen. Not with what you put on the field last year. No. You need to be better. Collectively and individually, you have to be better. Because Georgia's not stopping. LSU just went and got Lane Kiffin. They're not stopping. Alabama, they're not stopping. They're not. None of them. They're not stopping. To say nothing of the top end of the Big Ten, which is arguably better than the top end of the SEC right now. Sorry to say, might be the case again this year. So they're not stopping. They're not. So you're not trying to catch a moving target or a still target. You're trying to catch a moving target. You are not. They don't wait for you to catch them. That's not how this works. They're working their tail off too, which is the reason why I thought it would be. It's the reason why Heupel's success in the first few years did surprise me, frankly, because those other people aren't stopping. And Tennessee was in a dark place. And he did really well. But now it's what's next. That is the world. Mark Stoops is the best coach in the history of Kentucky football, probably. But things got to a point the past few years where he had to go. That's the world in which we live now. And in that world, Tennessee needs to play better defense than this. I don't give free passes. I understood everything the first 11 games for the most part. Didn't like it, but could understood it, could defend it, and I did. And I don't regret that. I'll stand on it today still. But letting Vanderbilt, even a good Vanderbilt team, this is the first time in my life that Vanderbilt has beaten a Tennessee football team that is not a bad football team. Look at all those Vanderbilt wins over Tennessee in the past, forever. When was the last time Vanderbilt beat a Tennessee football team? By the way, Tennessee didn't beat any teams with a winning record this season. Just throwing that out there. But still, not a bad football team. You let Vanderbilt come in there and pull down your pants and spank you. In the house built for the man, named after the man who was hired to beat Vanderbilt and beat Vanderbilt and then almost never lost to him again. You cannot, the enduring image of this season for everybody involved in that program has got to be the way Vanderbilt played with its food the final 8 minutes in your stadium. In your stadium. Third time this year you lost there. Not good. 5 or 6 consecutive losses to ranked teams. 13 in the past 15. Not good. But if you use that, if there's anything good to come from that game, wrote this after the game, and I meant it, Said it on Tennessee Tape Room, and I meant it. I'll say it again here today, and I'll mean it. I'll say it again in a couple days, and I'll mean it. I'll mean all of it. That game ending the way that it did, if it is the fuel that gets you where you need to go, it's a good thing. If that took anybody, including and especially Josh Heupel, who was on the fence about certain decisions, and if that didn't tip the scales, bud, what will? If you weren't sure before, you got to be sure now. That would be the good that comes from this. Because the day Tennessee starts accepting things like this against Vanderbilt are the days that it's not Tennessee anymore. And everybody in that program, new players, especially returning players, and coaches, that's got to be the fuel. That's got to be what sticks in your cross, sticks in your backside, a rock in your shoe. A rock in your shoe. A fly in your soup. A cow pie in your punch bowl. It's got to be, you can't forget it. It's got to be right there in your head, and it has to motivate you to not let it happen again. Because that kind of feeling against Vanderbilt, I don't know if it'll be tolerated one time. We'll see about that. I guarantee you, it will not be tolerated 2 times. It won't. Maybe once. We'll see. Maybe. It's not happening twice. It's not happening twice.
2-strike team here.
Yeah.
2 strikes.
No. Yeah, you go to the count. You go up to the box, 1-1, 1-2. It is what it is. Can't let it happen again. Guys, thanks for watching today. We got a lot to discuss. We'll have more basketball and everything as the week progresses, too. We'll certainly have recruiting stuff, signing day, all of that. But for now, there was one thing really to talk about today. Sorry, Lane Kiffin. There was something else to talk about today. And that was what happened on Saturday in Neyland, and it can't happen again a single time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in about 23 hours.